The internet exploded last night after what fans are calling the most shocking leak in Love and Hip Hop history. A hidden camera video surfaced online allegedly filmed inside Kirk Frost's private villa showing late-night business meetings that didn't look like business at all. The footage, which Jasmine Washington supposedly recorded without Kirk knowing, spread like wildfire across blogs and fan pages within hours. Twitter timelines filled with disbelief, and Rashida's name started trending before sunrise. No one knew what to believe. But one thing was clear, the Frost household was about to face a storm bigger than anything they'd seen on TV. The clip begins quietly, almost too quietly. You can hear soft music, the kind that plays when secrets are about to be told. Kirk's voice breaks through first, low and cautious, saying, "You know this can't get out." Jasmine replies, "Then you shouldn't have invited me here." Those 8 words were enough to send fans into meltdown. What followed looked like a confrontation that turned into something far more complicated, a private confession. Maybe even a reunion, hidden behind drawn curtains and expensive champagne. And if the timestamps on the footage are real, this wasn't old, it was filmed just weeks ago, while Kirk and Rashida were still posting happy couple photos online. By morning, bloggers had already slowed down the video frame by frame, catching glimpses of Jasmine's reflection in the mirror, Kirk pacing by the balcony doors, his phone lighting up repeatedly with messages labeled Rashida. Fans began comparing details from Kirk's Instagram stories: same villa decor, same shirt, same glass on the table. Within hours, the narrative formed. Jasmine had been secretly recording every meeting for months, waiting for the perfect time to expose the truth. And that time, it seemed, had finally come. As headlines flooded social media, Kirk caught on tape. Jasmine's revenge. Rashida blindsided again. Everyone wanted to know one thing: was this another setup for Love and Hip Hop drama? Or had the real-life betrayal spilled far beyond VH1's cameras? Producers refused to comment, but insiders hinted that something big had been brewing since the reunion taping in Atlanta. One anonymous crew member claimed Jasmine had warned them, saying, "When the world sees what he does behind closed doors, no one will call me a liar again." Meanwhile, fans rushed to Rashida's page, leaving thousands of comments, some begging her to leave Kirk, others urging her to take control of the story before the show does. Emotions ran high. Even former castmates began chiming in, cryptic as ever. Carly Red posted a broken heart emoji with no caption. Spice reposted a clip from one of Rashida's old songs about loyalty, writing, "The truth always finds its way out." By then, the speculation had turned into full-blown chaos. The question on everyone's lips now: how deep does this go? If Jasmine's hidden camera really captured more than one meeting, what else could be waiting to surface? And most importantly, how will Rashida respond when she realizes the man she fought to rebuild her marriage with might have been exposed? Not by tabloids or producers, but by the woman she thought was long gone. Stay tuned, because this story is about to get darker than anyone expected. Under the dim glow of the villa's hanging lights, Kirk sat at the edge of the marble counter, his phone face down, eyes restless. The night air from Puerto Rico carried a humid silence that made every whisper feel louder. Jasmine's heels clicked softly against the tiles as she entered, dressed not for drama but for answers. Her voice trembled at first, though she tried to sound firm. "You said this was just about the business," she muttered, setting her purse down beside the couch. Kirk exhaled, rubbing his temples. "It is. I told you we needed to talk things through without cameras, without everyone else twisting it." Jasmine crossed her arms, staring him down. "You mean without Rashida knowing?" That silence after her words was heavy enough to break glass. The villa, hidden behind tall palms and guarded walls, wasn't supposed to exist, at least not in Rashida's version of Kirk's life. But Jasmine had found out weeks ago that he kept this place off the books, using it as a creative retreat for business meetings. What she didn't know until recently was that he met there often, sometimes alone, sometimes not. And tonight, she wasn't here by chance. Inside her purse, hidden between lip gloss and a charger, was a miniature camera no bigger than a key. She'd pressed record the moment she stepped in. Every sigh, every confession, every lit was all being captured quietly, while Kirk tried to explain himself. "Look, Jasmine, I know how it looks," Kirk said, pacing now, trying to keep his voice steady. "But you coming here like this makes everything harder. I've been trying to fix things, not make them worse." Jasmine shook her head. "Fix things? Or hide them?" Her tone sharpened as she walked closer. "You told me we were done with the sneaking around, that you'd made peace with your marriage. That this," she pointed between them, "was in the past. So why invite me here again?" Kirk's jaw tightened. "Because you're still tied to this, whether you like it or not. You think people forgot what happened? They didn't. I just wanted to make sure you're good, that you're not planning something that could blow back on me. Those words hit differently because Jasmine was planning something. She'd been holding on to a string of messages, receipts, and voice notes from months of secret talks with Kirk, things that painted a picture of a relationship that never truly ended. She'd told herself she wouldn't use them, but after seeing him post family pictures with Rashida like nothing ever happened, something in her snapped. The world thought she was the villain, the homewrecker. Now, with this hidden footage, she could finally show everyone what really went on behind closed doors. As the camera rolled quietly in her bag, Kirk's phone buzzed again. The name Rashida flashed across the screen. Jasmine's eyes locked on it instantly. Kirk turned it face down again, pretending not to notice. "You gonna answer that?" she asked. "Not right now," he replied, avoiding her stare. "Why not? Tell her where you are. Tell her who you're with." Jasmine's voice cracked now, not with anger but exhaustion. "You act like you're protecting her, but you're just lying to both of us." Kirk sighed, running a hand down his face. "Jasmine, don't start this again." She laughed bitterly. "Start what?" "The truth." Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, as if the island itself could feel the tension rising inside the villa. Kirk stood still, his face hardening, but his voice soft. "You're not thinking straight. You leak anything from this, you're not hurting me or hurting yourself. You think people are gonna sympathize with you? They're gonna drag you again, worse than before." Jasmine stepped closer until she was inches from him. "Maybe, but at least they'll finally see that you're not the saint you pretend to be." For a few long seconds, they said nothing. The camera picked up the faint hum of the air conditioner, the distant waves. Kirk finally spoke, quieter this time. "You're not the enemy, Jasmine? You were a part of something messy, yeah, but that doesn't mean we gotta destroy each other." Jasmine stared at him, eyes glossy. "Then why did you destroy me first?" Her question hung in the air as Kirk looked away, pretending not to feel the weight of it. She picked up her purse, pretending to grab her phone, and subtly adjusted the camera angle so it faced him clearly. "You know what's funny?" she said after a pause. "Every time you tell me to move on, you're the one who calls first." Kirk frowned. "That's not fair." "No," she said. "What's not fair is you using me to fill the space your marriage left empty. And when it's convenient, you pretend I don't exist." Her voice broke slightly, but she held her ground. "You don't get to play both sides anymore." He leaned against the counter, lowering his tone. "You think I don't feel guilty? Every day, I wake up wondering how I got here. I built my life with Rashida, but somehow, He stopped himself. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Still what?" "Still care about you," he admitted under his breath. That moment could have melted everything, if not for what followed. Kirk's phone lit up again, this time with a video call. Rashida's face flashed across the screen before he declined it. Jasmine laughed softly, half in disbelief. "You just proved my point." She started walking toward the door, but Kirk followed. "Wait, Jasmine, don't leave like this." She turned back sharply. "How else should I leave, Kirk? You only reach out when you're scared. Scared of what I'll do. Scared of how she react. You don't want peace, you want control." The words sliced through him. He stepped back, his expression hardening again. "I'm not your enemy," he repeated, this time more defensive. "Then stop treating me like a secret." Jasmine's eyes locked onto his for the last time that night before she walked out. The villa door shut behind her, leaving Kirk alone with the echo of his choices. Outside, Jasmine walked to her car, breathing heavily, her heart racing not just from anger but from adrenaline. She pulled out her phone, opened the recording app, and checked the footage. Everything was there, his words, his tone, even the look in his eyes. She scrolled through for a moment, her finger hovering over the delete button, but she couldn't do it. "Maybe he needs to see what he looks like when he lies," she whispered to herself. She uploaded a small portion to a private cloud, naming it Villa Part 1. By the next morning, the first clip, a few seconds showing Kirk's blurred figure saying "this can't get out," leaked on a gossip page with over 500K followers. Within an hour, fans flooded the comments, piecing together voices, matching accents, pointing out decor, and declaring it was Kirk Frost's villa. Kirk had no idea yet. He was still asleep when his phone started blowing up. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat in her apartment watching the chaos unfold. The video had barely been online 30 minutes. And already the hashtags were trending. Hashtag FrostVilla, hashtag hidden footage, hashtag LHHATLTA. Calls poured in from producers, bloggers, and even cast members. One message from Carly Red simply said, "Girl, what did you just do?" Jasmine didn't reply. She just stared at the video as it replayed, feeling both terrified and free. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. She had 5 more clips. And the next one? That one would change everything. The second clip went live at 9:17 a.m., posted by a different blog that moved quicker than the rest and loved mess more than oxygen. Unlike the first teaser, this one had audio turned up and the frame brightened just enough to catch Kirk's silhouette pacing near the balcony while the ocean hissed in the background. Jasmine's voice came through steady, almost lawyer calm. "Tell me why you keep calling me back here." And Kirk answered, "Because there are things you can't say on text." Fans were shocked. In the comments, people froze the frame and circled the art on the wall. The silver champagne bucket, the navy curtains. Someone pulled up an old vacation story from Kirk's page that showed the same curtains swaying in the same direction. Within minutes, the consensus was set like wet cement in the sun. This was real. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided, at least online, with some siding with Jasmine's right to protect herself and others defending Rashida, saying she didn't deserve this kind of ambush. Rashida saw the clip the way most wives see the worst news, not from her husband, not from a friend, but from a stranger's DM flooding her requests with "Queen, please check this." She was in the boutique, smiling at a customer, when her manager whispered, "You might want to step to the back." She did. The video loaded slowly, then hit like a blow to the chest. At first, she thought denial would steady her. This could be edited. This could be old. This could be a prank. This could be anything but what it looked like. She replayed it once, twice, a third time, letting the ocean and the low music and the familiar stretch in her husband's voice wrap around her like a memory she wished she never had. Her phone rang. Kirk. She declined, watched the clip again, then texted him just 2 words, "Come now." Meanwhile, Jasmine sat cross-legged on her couch, laptop open, messages dinging nonstop. A producer whose number she'd deleted twice kept calling back with a new line each time. "We can help you tell this the right way. We'll protect your truth. We'll let you approve the cut." She didn't trust them. She barely trusted herself. There was a thrill to the chaos, a burn in her veins that felt like finally speaking after being quiet for too long. But in the same heartbeat she was scared. Scared of retaliation, scared of being painted heartless again, scared of how far the truth might go once it wasn't hers anymore. She closed the laptop and stared at her phone. Clip 3 sat in the folder labeled Villa, untouched, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath her thumb. Kirk reached the boutique fast, hat low, shades on, the kind of disguise that screams attention. He slipped through the side door and found Rashida in the stockroom, hands on the table, eyes set to ice. He started soft. "Babe, please let me." She cut him off with a palm. "What is it?" He swallowed. "It's old." "How old?" "Months." "How many months?" He paused a fraction too long. "A few." "Which few?" The silence thickened until it had shape. "I was trying to handle it without hurting you," he said, voice thinning. "I didn't want to bring something into the house that would make everything crash." She stared at him like he was a stranger who'd wandered behind her counter and asked for the register code. "You already brought it into the house," she said, voice flat. "You just tried to hide it under the rug." He reached out. She stepped back. "Don't touch me," she said, not loud but final. "Not until I know everything." He nodded, then rushed into explanations like a man building a bridge over a canyon using She showed up. "I told her to keep it clean. I wanted to make sure she wasn't about to do something crazy. That's why I used the villa, because I didn't want cameras. I didn't want it to look like, it looks like exactly what it looks like," Rashida said. "And she had a camera anyway." Across town, Erica Mena texted a friend a certain 3-word sentence, and that friend texted another friend. And soon the cast group chat that everyone pretended not to have started popping with side eyes and coded messages. Carly dropped a voice note. "I tried to tell y'all about those villas with the blue curtains." Spice posted a story with a ticking clock over the words "Truth always arrives." Producers sniffed blood in the water and began calling everyone with a contract and anyone without one. A junior staffer drafted a pitch deck titled "Rebuilding the Frost Brand," while an executive typed, "Can we clear villa location?" into a thread lit up by red exclamation marks. Jasmine's phone flashed. Unknown number. She let it ring out. It rang again with the local Atlanta area code. She answered. "Hello." Kirk's voice, tight but controlled. "I need to talk to you." She went quiet, then said, "You already did." He breathed once. "Not like this. Please." "You're only calling because she saw it," Jasmine said. "If she hadn't, you'd be sleeping fine." He didn't fight that. "I don't want this to turn into war." "It's already war," Jasmine replied. You declared it when you told me to stay quiet, and then invited me back, like a secret. He lowered his voice. Please don't post the rest. She almost laughed. Why? So you can get your story straight. So we can fix this. We can't fix this, she said, and ended the call before the guilt could climb into her throat and make a home. Clip 3 hit at noon. In it, you could hear Kirk say, "You don't get to play victim," and Jasmine respond, "I was never the victim. I was the warning." Fans were shocked again, not because of the lines themselves, but because of the timestamp in the corner that someone zoomed into and enhanced. It read August 14th, 2:03 a.m. A fan account pulled a screenshot of Kirk and Rashida's anniversary post from August 10th and wrote in all caps, 4 days after anniversary celebration. Comments split into camps so fast it felt orchestrated. One side said Jasmine was cruel for releasing on purpose to embarrass. Another side said the footage exposed a pattern long denied. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided, not just by stanlines, but by the old fracture everyone had tried to pretend was healed. Rashida locked the boutique early. The drive home passed in a blur, the kind where streetlights look like they're underwater. She didn't cry. She counted facts. There was a villa. There were multiple visits. There were calls she didn't know about. There was a camera she didn't expect. There was a husband standing in the kitchen when she walked in, phone face down, ring on, eyes asking for mercy. Sit, she said. He sat. Everything, she said. I want everything in order. He started with the first message Jasmine sent as closure. Then the night he slipped. Then the guilt. Then the attempt to manage fallout. Then the meetings to make sure she didn't spiral. Every sentence sounded both true and edited. When he finished, the room felt empty of air. You love me? She asked, voice thin at the edges. Yes, he said, immediate. Did you love her? He blinked. No. Did you care about her? I cared about the situation. She nodded like a judge who already knew the verdict but needed to hear the answers out loud for the record. The situation had a name, she said. He lowered his head. I'm sorry. She stood up, walked to the sink, turned the water on, then off. Like she was testing whether anything still responded to touch. The problem with sorry, she said, is that it asks the wounded person to heal the wound that someone else caused. He looked up. Tell me what to do. You don't get to be the one asking for instructions, she replied. Not today. Jasmine left her apartment to clear her head and made it to a coffee shop. Before recognizing two bloggers whispering near the register, one lifted a phone like a sword. Girl, we love you, they chirped, and before she could step away the front camera was open, a filter dusting her cheeks. Say hi to the people who have your back. She managed a small smile, then shook her head. I'm not doing press. As she reached the door, one of them called after her. Did you plant the camera? She paused. I planted the truth, she said, and left them with a soundbite that would headline 3 podcasts before sundown. By mid-afternoon, Kirk's lawyer sent a letter to 2 blogs and a platform, demanding removal, claiming unauthorized surveillance and copyright infringement. One blog posted the letter with the caption "When the shoe fits," and refused to take anything down. The lawyer warned of significant damages. Comments laughed at the phrase like it was a punchline at an open mic. The internet had already decided what mattered. The footage felt like proof, and proof is heavier than a threat. Then came the twist no one expected. Clip 4 wasn't from Jasmine's purse. The angle was higher, a cleaner view, like a nest in the corner beam. You could see the top edge of Kirk's head when he leaned back. See the shadow of Jasmine's hands when she gestured like she was pushing air away. At the end of the clip, after Jasmine left, there was a minute of silence and then a second voice, a man, not Kirk, saying quietly, "We got it." The internet detonated. Who else was there? Who said we got it? A neighbor, security, a private investigator, a producer, a friend, a foe? Theories multiplied like raindrops in a storm, each one claiming to be the definitive umbrella. Jasmine watched that angle with the rest of the world and felt the ground shift under her feet. She hadn't put that camera there. She hadn't known anyone else was watching. For a full minute she couldn't breathe. Just stared at the screen and heard her heart pound like someone knocking from the inside. Then the texts started pouring in again. Do you see this? Who filmed you? Are you safe? She thought of the villa's ceiling, the way the beam met the wall. The little pinhole she assumed was a sensor or a screw. She thought of how she had always been told she was the only villain in the story. She thought of the word setup like it was a room she had just stepped into and found no doors. Kirk called again. She answered, breath unsteady. So it wasn't just me, he said, and the way he said it made guilt lick at her ribs. No, she said. Congratulations, he spat. anger leaking through the cracks. You started a fire you can't control. You lit the match, she snapped back. He laughed once, bitter as cold coffee. You're not going to like what happens next. Neither are you, she said, but the words tasted like fear. Rashida watched clip 4 alone in the bedroom. Volume low, curtains closed. When the mystery voice said we got it, she felt a chill skitter down her spine. She paused, rewound, listened again, closed her eyes, and suddenly saw a conversation from months ago with a producer who'd asked far too many questions about travel dates and rentals. She remembered saying no to a proposed storyline. Remembered storming out of a meeting when someone suggested resolution therapy with Jasmine on camera. She opened her eyes and realized there might be more enemies in the room than just the ones she could see. The house filled with a silence that wasn't restful. Kirk shuffled in the doorway, hands empty. You heard it, he said. She nodded. I heard it. They played us, he said. You played me first, she replied, even, steady. He bowed his head. I deserve that. You deserve a lot, she said, and I deserve peace. She picked up her keys. He flinched. Where are you going? She looked at him. To think, she said, and walked out before he could ask if thinking was a synonym for leaving. Jasmine got a text from an unknown number that read, if you want to know who was in the ceiling, meet me where the island ends, followed by a pin drop near the cliff path behind the villas. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap. But there are moments in a life where standing still feels more dangerous than walking into the dark. She put on a hoodie, slid her phone into her pocket, and left without telling anyone where she was going. The cliff path smelled like wet stone and salt. Wind pushed her hair back and hissed secrets into her ears. A figure waited by the railing, hood up, hands in pockets. As she got closer, he lifted his face. It was the concierge from the villa, the one who always greeted them with island proverbs like medicine wrapped in sugar. His voice was careful. You're not the only one who wants the truth, he said. Then why hide it? She asked. He glanced over his shoulder. Because some truths are jobs. She stared. Who paid you? He shook his head. Not me, he said. But the camera in the beam belongs to someone who thinks stories are more valuable than people. She stepped closer. Who? He whispered a name that made Jasmine's skin prickle because it wasn't a producer or a blogger. It was a businessman who bankrolled events, who sponsored vacations, who loved being the off-camera puppet master when ratings dipped. Jasmine's stomach turned. Why would he do that? She asked. The concierge gave a small, sad smile. Because chaos pays better than comfort. She left the cliff with a secret that made every previous secret feel small. The narrative had shifted. She wasn't just exposing a man. She was stepping on the toes of a machine that produced scandal like factories produced smoke. At a red light, her phone lit up with a DM from a woman she hadn't spoken to in years. Sis, I know you think you're burning down his lies, but be careful. Some fires jump houses. As evening sank over Atlanta like a bruise, fans argued deeper, pages posted louder, and the city felt split right down the center. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided in living rooms and comment sections and group chats where cousins fought cousins over what counted as forgiveness and what counted as foolishness. In a quiet house with the lights still on, Rashida stared at a suitcase and did not touch it. In a car idling outside a gated villa, Kirk scrolled through his contacts, thumb hovering over names he'd once trusted. And somewhere between surf and stone, Jasmine stood at the water's edge, toes sinking into cold sand, understanding that once a story decides to stop being a story and starts being a reckoning, nobody gets to stay clean. Night fell on Atlanta with a strange quiet, the kind that hums before another explosion. The city lights flickered against rain-slicked streets while every gossip page replayed the same line. We got it. The mystery voice had become its own character, memed, slowed down, edited into loops, dissected in podcasts within hours. Some fans swore it sounded like a producer. Others said it was a bodyguard. But those who knew the Frost family's history whispered that it might be someone closer, someone who had been around long before Jasmine or the show ever came into play. Inside the Frost house, tension sat heavy. Kirk was pacing again, barefooted, phone pressed to his ear. I need you to tell me right now who else had access to that villa, he barked into the receiver. On the other end, a property manager stammered something about maintenance cameras, routine security, and not knowing who authorized the feed. Kirk's tone cracked. You're telling me somebody had a camera inside my private villa and you didn't know? He hung up before the man could answer. Rashida stood at the doorway, arms folded, quiet fury radiating off her. So now you're the victim, she asked. He turned toward her, face drawn. Someone set us up. No, she said. You set the stage. they just filmed the play. He opened his mouth to argue, but there was nothing left to defend. The internet had already ruled him guilty. Every post, every clip, every voice memo ripped from its context had become proof of betrayal. He tried to reach for her again, but she stepped back, eyes glassy. "Every time you make a mistake, I'm the one who has to carry the weight," she said. "I defended you when people laughed at me. I rebuilt our image when you broke it. And now the world gets to laugh again because you never learn." Her voice trembled near the end, but she didn't let herself cry. "Not yet. If you loved me," she whispered, "you would have protected me the way you protect your lies." He tried to speak, but the sound that came out wasn't an apology, was panic. "Someone's manipulating this. Jasmine's not the only one playing games. I can feel it." Rashida shook her head slowly. "Stop blaming the world for the choices you made." She grabbed her bag and keys, brushing past him. "You're good at damage control, Kirk. Handle this one alone." The door closed behind her like a final sentence. Across town, Jasmine sat in her car outside a quiet park, watching the rain form rivers down her windshield. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number again. She ignored it until a message came through. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." She read it twice. The words cold and sterile. No emoji, no name. She screenshot it and sent it to herself in an email. Subject line, "Just in case." Then she leaned back, staring at the dark sky. "You wanted to play games," she muttered. "Now everybody's in it." Her door suddenly opened. She jumped, gasped, ready to scream, then saw Carly Red sliding into the passenger seat, drenched and out of breath. "Girl, lock your car," Carly said, slamming the door. Jasmine blinked. "How did you even find me? You think I don't know your thinking spots?" Carly huffed, wiping her hair with a napkin. "Listen, this thing is getting bigger than you and Kirk. Producers are in full panic. Somebody higher up leaked that last clip, not you." Jasmine frowned. "How do you know?" "Because I heard the voice," Carly said. "That we got it. That wasn't a producer. That was him." She leaned closer. "That was young Jock." The name hit like thunder. Jasmine froze. "What? No. Joxie's Kirk's friend." "Exactly," Carly said. "Too close. Too involved. And too broke to say no when someone waves cash." Jasmine stared ahead, her mind rewinding through every conversation, every odd moment during filming, every time Jock joked about hidden cameras like it was harmless. "Why would he?" Jasmine whispered. Carly shrugged. "He said he wanted to expose fake storylines, that everybody was lying to the audience. But if you ask me, he just wanted attention. He didn't think the footage would blow this big." Jasmine's stomach twisted. "If he was working with someone who..." Carly hesitated. "Rumor is, a certain executive promised him a producer credit for next season if he delivered real scandal. Now he's gone silent, deleted half his socials." Jasmine rubbed her temples. "They're not just using me, they're using this to save their ratings." Carly nodded. "And they'll burn whoever they need to keep people watching." Back at the Frost home, Kirk sat alone in the living room, scrolling through old photos of him and Rashida vacations, birthdays, smiles that looked rehearsed now. A knock came at the door. He opened it to find Spice standing there, hoodie up, sunglasses on despite the rain. "You really did it this time," she said, stepping inside. "You know how bad this looks." Kirk rubbed his forehead. "I didn't leak anything. That's the problem," she said. "You didn't leak it, but you made it. You built the scene, now everyone else owns the footage." She dropped a flash drive on the table. "That's a copy of something I got from a friend in post-production. Watch it." He plugged it into his laptop. The screen showed another angle of the same night, but clearer like studio-grade footage. There was Jasmine, her expression tight. There was Kirk, nervous but composed. And there, barely visible in the mirror's reflection, was a faint figure holding a secondary camera. Not Jasmine, not Kirk. A man with braids and a gold chain. Kirk leaned forward, heart hammering. "That's Jock." Spice nodded. "They were setting you up from the start. But now that the world's watching, they'll pretend they had nothing to do with it." Kirk sat back, the weight of betrayal turning his stomach. "Why would he do me like that?" Spice shrugged. "Everybody wants their storyline." Meanwhile, Rashida wasn't at a hotel like people speculated. She was at her mother's house, curled up on the couch, scrolling through fan messages, half sympathetic, half cruel. Her mother handed her tea and said softly, "You don't have to decide tonight, baby." Rashida nodded, though her mind was far away. In between the chaos, one text kept replaying in her head, something Jasmine had once said seasons ago. During a reunion taping, you can forgive him 1,000 times, but one day your heart won't get the memo. Around midnight, Jasmine uploaded a 5th video. This one wasn't an argument. It was calm, almost tender. Kirk was talking about fear of losing everything, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as the bad guy again. He said, "You think you're exposing me, but I'm already exposed." The clip ended there. No captions, no commentary. Within minutes, people were arguing again. Some said Jasmine was humanizing him. Others said she was baiting sympathy. Either way, it worked. The views crossed 1 million in an hour. But Jasmine wasn't watching the numbers anymore. She was staring at her phone, waiting for the person behind the anonymous messages to reveal themselves again. At 12:48 a.m., another text came. "We're not done. Final drop in 24 hours. Stay quiet, if you want to stay safe." She felt her hands shake. She typed back, "Who are you?" No reply. By dawn, Atlanta woke to chaos all over again. Kirk's lawyer scheduled an emergency interview to set the record straight. Rashida declined to appear. Producers released a statement denying involvement but teasing a special episode event. Blogs reported sightings of Jasmine meeting with journalists. And in the middle of it all, the mysterious countdown had fans refreshing their screens every hour. In a dim studio somewhere downtown, the final clip sat in a queue waiting to be uploaded. But the voice that whispered "We got it" wasn't done yet. This time, the footage showed something no one expected: someone else entirely entering the villa after Jasmine left. And when the camera turned, it caught a face that would make Atlanta gasp once more. The final clip surfaced just before sunrise, like a ghost that refused to wait for permission. It appeared on a page no one had ever heard of before. No watermark, no caption. Just a grainy thumbnail of the villa door swinging open after Jasmine's exit. Fans clicked before they could even think, and within minutes, the clip spread across every gossip feed in Atlanta. The video began in silence, night still wrapped around the villa like a secret. Kirk had just left the room. The camera, still rolling, caught the faint sound of another door opening. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Then the figure appeared: a woman, wearing a silk robe and holding a phone to her ear. The internet froze when the frame brightened enough to reveal her face. It wasn't Jasmine. It wasn't Rashida. It was Kendra Robinson. For a long few seconds, she stood there, looking around like she was checking to make sure the room was empty. She placed her phone on speaker. A muffled male voice came through. Young Jock's voice. Unmistakable. "It's done?" he asked. Kendra sighed. "Yeah, Jasmine just left. Kirk's gone. It's quiet." Jock said. "Good. Make sure the drive's secure. They'll pay extra if it's clean audio." Her head tilted toward the hidden camera, eyes glinting under the chandelier light. "You sure they won't trace it?" "Nah," Jock replied. "They'll think Jasmine did the whole thing." The screen shook slightly as Kendra picked something up from the counter, a small black device, and tucked it into her bag before leaving. The internet imploded. Fans flooded every platform, screaming in disbelief. The hashtags flipped instantly. Hashtag Kendra got caught. Hashtag JOC setup. Hashtag Frost Villa conspiracy. Emotions ran high, and the entire Love and Hip Hop family was thrown into chaos. Blogs that had spent days dragging Jasmine now turned their attention to Jock and Kendra. People dug through old interviews. Moments when Jock laughed too hard at Kirk's marriage jokes, or when Kendra deflected questions about trust. Old clips of her warning women to watch their back around industry men were now being played side by side with her voice in the leaked footage. In Atlanta, chaos turned to shock. Kirk saw the video before breakfast. He didn't even bother calling his lawyer this time. He went straight live on Instagram, his tone raw, unfiltered, shaking with rage. "Y'all played me like I'm some fool," he said, pacing his living room. "I gave that man a seat at my table. I treated him like family. And this what I get?" Hundreds of comments flew up the screen. Say names: Kirk, drag Jock, Rashida, watching this like a queen. But Kirk didn't hold back anymore. "Young Jock and Kendra," he said flatly, "y'all crossed a line. Y'all been setting this up behind my back while pretending to care about my marriage." He slammed his phone down, ending the live. At that same moment, Jock and Kendra's phones began exploding. Her law office number went straight to voicemail, while Jock tried to post a denial that only made things worse. "That audio's fake," he said in a story that lasted less than an hour before deletion. Somebody playing games with edited clips. But fans didn't buy it. They'd already matched his voice to past interviews, lining up the sound waves like detectives. One fan tweeted, "Same tone, same laugh, same guilt." Within minutes, his denials looked like confessions. Rashida, sitting in her mother's living room, watched it all unfold in silence. She hadn't said a word publicly since the first leak, but her phone buzzed nonstop with interview requests, brand managers, and castmates begging for her comment. Her mother whispered, "You should speak your truth." Rashida looked at the screen where Kendra's face froze mid. Nah, she said quietly. I'm gonna let them talk themselves into their own graves. Jasmine, meanwhile, was both vindicated and terrified. Her phone was ringing off the hook: producers, publicists, lawyers, even people she hadn't heard from in years, suddenly acting like best friends. The headlines had flipped: Jasmine vindicated. Hidden footage not her doing. Kendra and Jock masterminds behind the villa sting. But even as the world cheered for her, Jasmine didn't feel safe. The messages from the unknown number hadn't stopped. Another text arrived that morning. They're done. But you're still not free. She threw the phone across the bed, trembling. What do you want from me? She whispered to the empty room. By noon, BH1's executive team met in Atlanta, locked behind closed doors. One insider leaked a snippet from the call. The footage was never licensed through us. One voice said, and now we're being blamed for a private surveillance scandal. Another voice replied coldly, people are watching again. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The silence that followed said everything. Hours later, Kirk showed up at the Frost boutique, not to fight, but to find Rashida. She was there, sitting at her desk, scrolling through her online store analytics as if nothing had happened. When she saw him, she didn't flinch. You got what you wanted? She asked. The truth? He said. Nah, she said. The spotlight. He shook his head. You really think I wanted this? I think you wanted control, she replied. And you lost it, he sighed. They used us. They couldn't use you if you didn't open the door, she said, then looked him dead in the eye. I'm tired of being collateral damage in your lessons. He stood there, hands in his pockets, unsure what to say. The old Kirk would have argued, begged, promised change. But now, something about her calm broke him more than her anger ever could. I'll fix it, he said finally. Rashida shook her head. No, Kirk, this time, I'll fix me. Meanwhile, Jasmine decided she couldn't hide anymore. She called a press conference at a small Atlanta studio. Oh, glam team. No makeup, just her and a plain background. Everybody's seen the videos, she said, looking straight at the camera. But what y'all didn't see was the setup behind them. I didn't film anyone. I recorded conversations I was scared to be a part of, and someone else turned them into bait. Her voice cracked as she continued. This wasn't about exposing one man, it was about exposing how this industry plays people like pawns. Reporters shouted questions, but she just whispered, I'm done being a pawn. The statement hit harder than expected. Within hours, she was trending again, but this time under hashtags like #JusticeForJasmine and #SetUpToSell ratings. People began questioning not just Kirk's role, but the show itself, the producers, the network, even the contracts that allowed private spaces to become public drama. As evening rolled in, Kendra finally broke her silence with a single post, a black screen, and the words, Don't believe everything you hear. Everyone's got footage. The cryptic warning reignited the fire. Fans started theorizing about more tapes, more hidden cameras, more untold stories buried inside the walls of those luxury villas. By nightfall, Atlanta felt like it was holding its breath. Kirk sat alone, watching the last clip again. Hearing Jock's voice echo over the sound of the waves, Jasmine turned her phone off and packed a suitcase. Rashida poured herself a drink and stared at her reflection, the calm after destruction setting in. And somewhere in a dark editing room, a producer closed a laptop labeled Villa Project Final Cut, smiled faintly, and said to no one in particular, Season ratings secured. Hours after Jasmine's raw statement hit every platform, the world's attention didn't cool, it boiled. News anchors who usually avoided reality gossip suddenly dedicated full segments to the Villa tapes. Entertainment outlets debated privacy laws and production ethics. Even former love and hip-hop stars chimed in, some defending Jasmine, others calling the leaks the mess that keeps feeding the machine. But deep in Atlanta, the people inside the storm weren't arguing online, they were unraveling in private. Rashida woke up to sunlight slicing through half-closed blinds. Her boutique phone was already ringing downstairs. Probably her assistant asking about damage control, but she didn't move. On the nightstand lay her wedding ring, off for the first time in years. Her phone buzzed with another text from Spice. They're planning a group sit-down episode. Say no, sis. They just want tears for ratings. Rashida typed back slowly. I'm not crying on cue anymore. Then she set the phone down and took a long breath. Somewhere between the rage and exhaustion, she'd found a strange peace. Not forgiveness, just clarity. Kirk, on the other hand, hadn't slept. He was in his car outside VH1's Midtown office before sunrise, still wearing the same hoodie from last night's live. When a junior producer arrived, Kirk got out and stopped him mid-step. Tell them I'm not signing another season, he said. The producer blinked, startled. Mr. Frost. I tell them, Kirk repeated, his voice rough. They're not using my family anymore. He got back in his car and drove off before the man could reply. Yet even as he pulled away, the thought hung heavy. Leaving the show wouldn't erase what the world had seen. The internet had already turned his life into its own series, one that wouldn't stop airing just because he wanted silence. At noon, Kendra and Jock finally emerged, hand in hand, walking into a law office downtown. Photographers swarmed, shouting questions. Kendra, was that your voice in the clip? Jock, did you set Kirk up? Are you working with producers? Jock forced a grin, the same charm that once worked on cameras but now looked like defense. No comment, he said, guiding Kendra inside. But the tension between them was visible. She yanked her hand free the second the door closed. You said they'd never find out, she hissed. You said this would blow over in a week. Jock threw his hands up. You think I planned for Jasmine to flip the script? I just wanted to make a storyline that hit. Now it's hitting me. Kendra stared at him, disgust curling in her voice. You sold people out for ratings. And you dragged me down with you. She turned away before he could answer, walking straight into the lawyer's office. The network's internal crisis meeting happened that afternoon. In a boardroom lined with muted art and fake calm, executives spoke in careful tones. Public sympathy has shifted. One said, if we air anything connected to the villa, we'll look predatory. Another, colder voice countered, we're already painted that way. Might as well own it. Someone suggested offering exclusive interviews dressed as transparency. Someone else suggested buying silence. Outside the door, a young assistant recorded the entire meeting on her phone and texted the file to a friend. By sunset, a transcript was leaked. The internet read the words like scripture. Scandal is the brand now. When Jasmine saw the leak, she laughed once, hollow and tired. Scandal is the brand, she whispered, repeating it like a spell. She was in a hotel room, blinds shut tight, bags packed but nowhere to go. The messages from the unknown number had stopped for 12 hours, then resumed. You played your part. Don't ruin the ending. She typed back, who are you? Still no reply. For the first time, she considered walking away from Atlanta entirely. But then another notification appeared, a direct message from Rashida. The message was short. Meet me. Neutral ground. No cameras. Jasmine hesitated for a long minute before replying. Where? That evening, they met at a quiet cafe off Peachtree, one that closed early and had no paparazzi around. Rashida arrived first, calm but unreadable. Jasmine came 10 minutes later, sunglasses hiding everything but guilt. For a while, neither spoke, just the faint hum of traffic outside and two untouched coffees between them. Finally, Rashida said, I don't want your apology. Jasmine nodded. I figured. Rashida's tone softened slightly. I want your version. Not the blogs. Not the producers. Yours. Jasmine looked down at her hands. I didn't set you up, she said quietly. I set him up. But they twisted it. They made me the villain. And when they realized I had proof, they took it and made a movie out of our pain. Rashida listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. You think I don't know how they twist stories? She said finally. I've lived it for 10 years. Jasmine's eyes lifted, searching for some sign of understanding. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, but if I stayed quiet, I'd still be the liar. I thought exposing Kirk would free me. Instead, I just gave them new footage. Rashida leaned back, exhaling. Freedom doesn't come from proving people wrong. It comes from being done. Jasmine nodded slowly, realizing it was the first real truth spoken between them in years. Outside, someone in a black van took pictures through a cracked window. Within hours, the photo of Jasmine and Rashida sitting together would flood the internet with captions like Women Unite After Betrayal and the real alliance nobody saw coming. But for once, neither woman cared about optics. Before they parted, Rashida said, whatever happens next, don't let them own your story again. Jasmine smiled faintly. You too. Meanwhile, Jock's world was collapsing. Sponsors pulled deals, club appearances were cancelled, and fans flooded his comments with clown emojis. Kendra's law partners suspended her from the firm. Her statement, blaming selective editing, only made things worse once people replayed her voice in the leaked call. Late that night, she packed a suitcase in silence while Jock tried to talk. We can fix this, he said. We just have to get ahead of it. She stopped, looking at him with cold disbelief. You still think this is a storyline, she said. It's our life falling apart. She left without another word, the suitcase wheels thudding softly across the floor. 2 days later, the network announced an emergency reunion episode, not filmed in Atlanta, but live, with uncensored truth. Producers sent out contracts promising everyone final say over their edits, though nobody believed it. Kirk declined. Rashida didn't respond. Jasmine said she'd only appear if they agreed to air her full uncut footage. No music, no narration. When they refused, she posted the entire folder herself, uploading every clip to her YouTube channel under the title "The Parts They Never Wanted You to See." The views climbed by the millions overnight. Fans stayed up dissecting every frame. One comment read, "This isn't reality TV anymore, it's confession art." Another said, "Jasmine did what journalism couldn't." The next morning, she woke up to emails from streaming services and documentary producers. For the first time, she had control. By the end of the week, Kirk issued a final statement. "My family's stepping back from the show. We've given enough." Rashida posted a single line underneath. "Peace doesn't need cameras." Together, they vanished from social media, at least for now. As for Jasmine, she disappeared from Atlanta for months. When she resurfaced, it wasn't with gossip or scandal but with a quiet podcast called The Unedited Truth. Her first episode opening with the line, "If you tell your story yourself, they can't sell it back to you." And somewhere in an editing suite in Los Angeles, the producer who had smiled after locking the final villa cut watched Jasmine's video hit 10 million views. He leaned back, expression unreadable, then muttered to himself, "Looks like she learned the game." But deep down, he knew the truth. The game hadn't ended, it had only changed players. Weeks later, Atlanta's skyline returned to its usual rhythm, gossip, and ambition, but underneath the noise, the shockwaves from the villa scandal still pulsed like a heartbeat no one could quiet. The Frost Boutique reopened quietly. Kirk showed up every day, not as the man from television, but as someone trying to remember what normal felt like. He fixed shelves, unpacked inventory, and avoided eye contact with customers who whispered his name like a headline. Rashida, still poised, still sharp, moved through the space with a new kind of distance, cordial but detached. They worked side by side without speaking much, yet every silence between them said more than an argument ever could. "People keep asking if I'm okay," she said one afternoon, adjusting a display. Kirk looked up from the register. "And what do you tell them?" She shrugged. "Depends on the day." He nodded slowly. "You want to know what I tell them?" She didn't look up. "No," she said softly, "but you'll tell me anyway." He smiled faintly. "That I'm grateful, even if it's all gone. Even if I'm the villain, at least the truth ain't hiding anymore." She didn't respond, but for the first time in weeks, her expression softened just a little. Outside, reporters had grown tired of waiting. The story cycle had moved on to another breakup, another scandal, but the villa saga lingered in podcasts, reaction videos, and conspiracy forums. Fans still dissected every second of the footage, convinced there were more angles, more hidden players. One theory claimed the entire setup was a covert pilot for a new series about media manipulation. Another said the "We Got It" voice belonged to a network executive who'd fled the country. Jasmine's name appeared in every theory like punctuation. Meanwhile, Jasmine had rebuilt herself quietly. Her podcast, The Unedited Truth, wasn't just viral, it was powerful. Each episode unpacked what really happens behind reality. She interviewed former cast members, stylists, assistants, even anonymous editors who confessed how storylines were twisted frame by frame. "They call it reality," one said, voice disguised, "but it's a script written in pain." Jasmine never interrupted them. She let silence do the work. By episode 3, her audience doubled. By episode 5, she'd signed a streaming deal. Then one night, during a live Q&A, someone asked, "Would you ever forgive Kirk?" Jasmine paused, the chat filling with emotion. Finally she said, "Forgiveness isn't about making someone else comfortable. It's about closing the door so you can sleep in peace. I think I'm there now." It was simple, but the line traveled fast, screenshotted, quoted, reposted. Even Rashida saw it, watching from her kitchen, a half-smile tugging at her lips. A week later, Spice invited Jasmine to a charity gala. It was the first public event Jasmine had attended since the leaks. The red carpet buzzed with flashing lights and questions she refused to answer. Inside, she spotted Rashida across the room. For a long moment, neither woman moved. Then Rashida nodded once, subtle but genuine. Jasmine returned the gesture. No cameras caught it, but for those two, it was the only closure they needed. Backstage, producers from a major streaming network approached Jasmine. "We're developing a docuseries," one said. "Truth about reality TV. We want you as executive producer." She studied them for a moment before replying. "No spin." The man laughed nervously. "No spin. Then you don't need me," she said, walking away. Meanwhile, Jock and Kendra had vanished from Atlanta's nightlife completely. Tabloids reported they'd relocated to Miami to rebuild privately, though fans doubted privacy was possible anymore. An unverified photo later surfaced of Jock performing at a small lounge. No cameras, no glitter, just music. Comments under the photo read like eulogies for fame. Rashida began posting again weeks later, nothing dramatic, just snippets of her boutique, new arrivals, home decor. In one caption, she wrote, "Healing in private feels better than performing pain." Fans flooded her comments with love, relief, pride. For the first time, her name wasn't trending for heartbreak, it was trending for grace. Kirk appeared in one post quietly, sitting on the porch, their son between them, smiling. She didn't label it as a reconciliation. She didn't need to. Months passed. The villa stood empty, its once polished floors gathering dust, curtains swaying in the ocean breeze. One afternoon, a film crew arrived not from VH1, but from a documentary team investigating the ethics of reality television. As they set up cameras, the lead producer asked the caretaker, "Who owns this place now?" The man shrugged. "Some media company bought it after the scandal. They say it's going to be a museum for transparency." He laughed. "Whatever that means." But the final scene belonged to Jasmine. Sitting in her small studio, microphone glowing red, she began her newest episode. Her tone calm, measured. "Truth doesn't disappear," she said. "It waits. It hides in the corners until someone's brave enough to shine a light. But here's what they don't tell you. Once you find it, you can't go back to sleep." She smiled, almost tenderly. "So if you're listening tonight, remember this. No matter how edited the world feels, your story is still yours." The music faded in softly. Jasmine leaned back, eyes closing for a moment as if the chaos had finally loosened its grip. Outside, Atlanta lights flickered, casting reflections across her window. For the first time since the villa, she felt weightless. And somewhere, far from the noise, the ocean whispered against the old villa walls, quiet now, but not empty. The cameras were gone. The lies were gone. Only the truth remained, humming low like electricity in the dark. The story refused to die completely. Even months later, Atlanta carried its echoes, whispers in beauty salons, barbershops, and brunch spots. Everyone still had a theory, a version, a side. The villa, though silent, had become a legend. People drove by the gated road just to take pictures, calling it the house where the truth finally won. Kirk rarely went near it. He'd started spending more time at home, quieter than anyone had seen him in years. He helped their youngest with homework, fixed the old porch swing, and left his phone on silent. Sometimes, when Rashida watched him like that, she almost saw the man she'd once fallen for, not the celebrity, not the scandal, just the person. It didn't erase the pain, but it softened something small inside her. Enough to breathe again without bitterness sitting in her throat. Rashida's focus shifted back to herself. She expanded the boutique, launched a small skincare line, and refused interviews no matter how tempting the checks were. When a journalist from a major network asked for an exclusive on surviving betrayal, she laughed and said, "The survival part ain't the story, it's what comes after." Fans adored her quiet strength. Hashtags like #rebuilt by our ASHEEDA trended for weeks. And for once, they weren't about pity. They were about respect. Kirk stayed out of the spotlight entirely. When people spotted him, it was usually at community events or church fundraisers. Never on stage, never with cameras. If he felt lost without fame, he didn't show it. Maybe he was finally learning how to live without needing the audience. Jasmine, meanwhile, had become something else, entirely a symbol. Her podcast, The Unedited Truth, grew beyond Atlanta, reaching listeners across the country. She didn't talk about the Frost family anymore. She talked about survival, image, and how stories get sold before people even realize they've been written into them. Her tone matured, gentler now, not angry but aware. She'd stopped defending herself months ago. Now, she let the silence between her words speak for her. The media called her the girl who turned scandal into scripture. She didn't like the title, but she couldn't deny it. Changed her life. For the first time, she wasn't being talked about, she was being listened to. And yet, every now and then, the past sent small reminders. A fan would tag her in an old clip, or someone would message her saying they finally believed her side. She never responded, but sometimes she'd watch those old moments alone. The Jasmine in those videos looked younger, harder, always on guard. The Jasmine now was calmer, almost tender. She'd traded anger for understanding, and somehow that felt louder than revenge ever could. She lived in a smaller apartment, near the water, and she walked every morning without her phone. She said the quiet made her feel clean again. Spice released a song inspired by the whole saga, a soulful trackled behind the edits. It played on every Atlanta station, its chorus simple but haunting. They cut the truth, but left the pain. It hit #1 on urban radio within a week. And when Jasmine reposted the song with a single heart emoji, fans flooded the comments. It wasn't drama anymore, it was reflection. Even Carly Red, known for never missing a moment of chaos, stepped back from gossip and started a podcast of her own about healing through mess. It seemed like everyone had learned something, even if it took destruction to get there. As for Jock and Kendra, they stayed mostly silent. Months passed with no sightings until one fan video surfaced from a small bar in Orlando. Jock was performing, stripped down to just a mic and a keyboard player, singing an old love song from before fame. The crowd was small but warm, clapping slowly, forgivingly. Kendra wasn't on stage, but she was there, sitting at a corner table, smiling faintly. Maybe they were rebuilding in their own way. Maybe, like everyone else, they were tired of pretending that exposure equals healing. One humid night in late summer, Jasmine returned to Atlanta quietly. She didn't tell anyone. She parked near Piedmont Park, walked to a bench overlooking the city skyline, and sat with a notebook. She wrote in long, looping lines, not for the podcast, not for publication, but for herself. When she finished, she tore out the page and tucked it into her bag. Before leaving, she looked at the city lights and whispered, "I'm not running anymore." Somewhere across town, Rashida was closing her boutique for the night, locking the glass doors and smiling softly as Kirk turned off the lights behind her. They didn't talk about the past anymore, not because it didn't matter, but because they'd finally outlived it. Atlanta exhaled. The cameras had moved on, but the truth they uncovered left a mark that wouldn't fade. The villa still stood by the sea, quiet, with only the sound of waves and wind passing through its halls. And though the lights were long gone, it carried a strange kind of peace-proof that even the most televised lies eventually run out of audience. In the end, all that was left were people, stripped of edits, learning how to live again. Great, I'll balance all three arcs: Jasmine's peace and purpose, Rashida's quiet power and renewal, and Kirk's reflection and legacy. I'll write it as a cinematic, extended epilogue, flowing like a film's final act, slow, emotional, full of visual texture, realism, and closure, around 5,000 words in continuous paragraph form, ready for narration or dramatic reading. The world had long since moved on, but Atlanta still remembered. The villa stood silent now, its shutters closed against the salt wind, its walls stained faintly with the passing of time. Vines crept up the sides like green veins reclaiming old wounds. No one came there anymore except the caretaker, who swept the steps every morning and sometimes stopped to stare out at the ocean. The sound of the waves carried whispers of everything that had happened there: the voices, the confessions, the anger, the tears. It was quiet now, but the air still held memory. Rashida woke each morning before sunrise, not from habit but from peace. Her home had changed, the walls repainted, the framed photos rearranged, the energy softer. She brewed her tea in silence, letting the steam fog the window before her. Outside, the first light slid across the porch where Kirk sometimes sat with his notebook. He didn't speak much these days, but the silence between them no longer burned it breathe. They had reached a space beyond apology, beyond justification, where love had aged into something steadier, something that didn't demand performance. When people saw them in town, they always wondered if they were back together. Neither answered. They didn't owe anyone that clarity. Sometimes they went to dinner, sometimes they didn't speak for days. Sometimes he slept in the guest room, sometimes he didn't. What mattered wasn't the label anymore, it was that the bitterness had drained away, replaced by something cleaner, quieter. The war was over. They had survived the noise. At the boutique, Rashida had transformed the back room into a workshop. The shelves were lined with glass jars of oils, herbs, and handwritten labels. She was building a skincare line made for women who've had to start over. The name Resilience by Rashida was printed in soft gold on every bottle. She didn't advertise it on television or pay influencers to promote it. Instead, she sent handwritten thank you notes to every woman who ordered online. "You're not alone," she wrote at the end of each letter. On Saturdays, she hosted free classes at the store for young women trying to start their own businesses. She told them about margins and suppliers, about staying consistent, about finding their voice before the world decided what to call them. And sometimes, when the questions turned emotional, she'd smile and say, "The trick isn't avoiding storms, it's learning to build through them." She never mentioned Kirk. She didn't need to. Everyone knew the story, and they could see its ending written in the calm behind her eyes. Kirk spent more time at the studio than he had in years, not chasing hits but teaching. He'd started mentoring young producers, helping them record without losing their royalties. His lessons were practical, honest. Don't sell your soul for a contract, he'd tell them. The label can't love you back. The irony wasn't lost on him. Sometimes, while giving advice, he'd feel the sting of his own past mistakes, like echoes coming home to roost. One afternoon, he found an old hard drive labeled Villa Sessions. He hesitated before plugging it in. Inside were songs he'd started during the chaos and released, half-finished, full of static and emotion. One track caught his ear, Jasmine's voice humming a melody she'd improvised one night during a tense recording. He remembered how she'd been sitting by the balcony, her voice low, almost trembling, singing about freedom before she even knew she'd lose it. Kirk sat there for a long time listening, then picked up his guitar and finished the song. He called it Truth Without Camera. It wasn't meant for release, but the words healed something in him. Meanwhile, Jasmine had carved a different world entirely. She lived by the ocean now, far from Atlanta's lights. Her podcast, The Unedited Truth, had become a quiet empire streamed in dozens of countries. Studied in classrooms, quoted by journalists who once mocked her. But Jasmine didn't chase fame. She spoke softly, choosing words like medicine. Her studio overlooked the water, and every episode began the same way, the faint sound of waves. Then her voice saying, "Welcome back. Let's unlearn something today." People called her an advocate, a truth teller, a survivor. But Jasmine didn't think of herself that way. In her private journal, she wrote simpler things. "I'm learning to forgive the part of me that needed to be seen. Today I felt peace for 3 full minutes. Maybe healing is just learning how to exist without reacting." Her handwriting had softened, looping gently like calm seas. Once a month, she visited her mother's grave, back in Georgia. She'd bring flowers, sit on the grass, and talk as if she were recording another episode. "I thought I was doing it for revenge," she said once. "Turns out, I was just trying to be heard." She'd smile, tracing her fingers over the nameplate. "I finally stopped shouting." On the anniversary of the first leaked footage, Atlanta's skyline glittered brighter than usual. A local art collective hosted an exhibition titled Unfiltered, The Cost of Exposure. One wall displayed still frames from the Villa saga, not for scandal, but as part of a discussion about truth and performance. Under one image of Jasmine, Rashida, and Kirk during happier days. The caption read, "They taught us that healing isn't always reconciliation, it's recognition." Jasmine attended quietly, hood up, unnoticed by most. She stood before that wall for a long time, taking in the frozen moments that once defined her pain. A young woman beside her turned and whispered, "You look like her." Jasmine smiled faintly. "Maybe we all do." The woman blinked, unsure, then nodded. Whoever she was, she changed the game. Jasmine's smile deepened, small and knowing. "Yeah," she said. She did. When the exhibit ended, Jasmine stepped outside into the cool night air. Across the street, she saw a familiar car parked by the curb, Kirk's old black SUV. She hesitated, then crossed over. Kirk leaned against the car, hands in his pockets, eyes weary but kind. "Didn't think you'd show," he said. "I almost didn't," she replied. "But then I figured, the world already saw everything else. Might as well see this too." They both laughed softly, a shared exhaustion lingering in their smiles. "You still by the water?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "You still pretending you don't miss the spotlight?" His chuckle was brief but genuine. Some habits die harder than others. They stood in silence for a while, the city humming around them. Finally, Jasmine said, "You know, I used to wish I could erase it all. The villa, the show, the mess. Now I think I'm glad it happened." Kirk looked at her, surprised. "Glad? Yeah," she said. "Because it forced me to grow up in front of everyone, and somehow, I still found myself." He nodded slowly. "Guess that's one thing we all did." They parted without drama. No grand goodbyes, just a quiet wave under the streetlights. As she walked away, Jasmine glanced back once and saw Kirk watching her, his face unreadable but peaceful. Maybe this was forgiveness not spoken, not declared, but lived. Rashida, at home that same night, lit a candle in the kitchen. She'd gotten into the habit of doing it every evening, saying a silent prayer of gratitude. It wasn't about faith in the traditional sense, it was about grounding herself. Remembering the woman she became through fire. Her sons had grown taller, more protective, more aware of their parents as people, not symbols. One night her youngest asked, "Mama, do you ever get tired of being strong?" She smiled and said, "Baby, I don't have to be strong all the time. I just have to be honest." The next morning, she drove to the studio where Kirk worked and walked in without calling. He looked up, startled but not unwelcome. "You forgot this," she said, handing him a lunch bag. He grinned. "You made my favorite." "Don't flatter yourself," she said. "The boys packed it." He laughed. The sound light, easy. "Thank them for me." She started to leave, then paused at the door. "Kirk," she said softly, "I don't hate you anymore." He nodded slowly. "I know." The villa, miles away, remained untouched. Months turned to years. The waves kept crashing, erasing footprints no one remembered. One summer morning, Jasmine returned there alone. The gate was rusted but still open. She walked through the path lined with overgrown palms, her sandals brushing the sand. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and salt. She ran her fingers along the walls, remembering every echo, every betrayal, every secret. On the balcony, she set down her bag and pulled out a small camera, not to record, but to leave behind. She placed it on the table, battery drained, lens cracked. "You've done enough," she whispered. Then she turned toward the sea, watching sunlight dance across the water. Her hair blew in the wind, and for the first time in years, she smiled without fear. Later that evening, she wrote her final podcast entry. Her voice was calm, almost meditative. "We spend so much of life trying to prove we're right," she said. "But sometimes peace isn't about being right, it's about no longer needing to explain. I used to think exposure destroyed me. Now I realize it just showed me who I really was under all the edits." She paused, letting the silence fill the space. And maybe that's the truth we all come here to find, not the one people film, but the one that lets us breathe again. Rashida heard the episode while driving home. She parked in her driveway and sat there until it ended. By the time Jasmine's final words faded, Rashida's eyes were damp but her smile was steady. She whispered, "You did it, girl." Kirk, listening from his studio, nodded in quiet agreement. Years later, when people spoke of the villa scandal, it had become folklore, no longer gossip, but a story about transformation. They said, Jasmine turned pain into wisdom, Rashida turned betrayal into empire, and Kirk turned regret into guidance. Their names still sparked recognition, but the tone had changed. They were no longer characters in a spectacle. They were survivors of their own humanity. And so the city kept moving. Atlanta built new legends, new dramas, new noise, but in quiet corners between the boutiques, the studios, and the CPs lived on. Jasmine kept her ocean view. Rashida kept her light. Kirk kept his lessons. And the villa, bathed in endless sunlight, kept their ghosts. Some stories burn fast and vanish. Theirs lingered soft, echoing, unfinished yet complete. Not because of what was exposed, but because of what was rebuilt after everything broke. Truth had found its place, and finally, it could rest. Autumn drifted into Atlanta like a sigh, soft and golden, and life settled into something almost tender again. Time had peeled away the noise that once defined them, leaving behind something simpler: routine, quiet, growth. It was in that stillness that everything found meaning. Rashida's mornings began with the soft hum of the city waking beneath her window. She still rose early, long before the boutique opened, long before Kirk shuffled into the kitchen to pour his coffee. She'd stand by the mirror, smoothing her hair, her reflection calmer now, her eyes lighter. She had learned, finally, how to exist without proving anything. Her name was no longer tied to survival, it was tied to legacy. The boutique had expanded into 3 locations, each one managed by young women she'd mentored herself. When she visited, the staff would light up, proud to show her the displays, the new designs, the thriving energy she'd built from rubble. She'd nod, offer notes, laugh easily. But her favorite moments were when she stood near the door, watching women of every kind browse her shelves. They no longer whispered about scandals when they saw her. Now, they smiled, saying, "You helped me believe I could start over." That, more than any sale or sponsorship, was what kept her heart steady. One afternoon, as she arranged skincare sets on a display table, Kirk walked in quietly, holding a small box. He looked nervous, almost shy, like a man stepping into memory. "Don't worry," he said before she could ask. "It's not what you think." He opened the box to reveal a charm bracelet, tiny gold pieces shaped like microphones, hearts, and small initials. "The boys helped design it," he said. "They said it should represent strength." She smiled faintly, touched but guarded. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said softly, "but I wanted to." She took the bracelet, fingers tracing its delicate shine. "It's beautiful," she said, her tone steady. "Thank you." When he turned to leave, she called after him, "You know, I'm proud of you." He paused, startled. "For what?" "For not running anymore," she said. "You finally faced yourself." He nodded slowly, eyes soft. "You too." And then he was gone. The bell above the door chiming softly behind him. That night, Rashida posted a short message online, not a statement, not a speech, just a line. Growth is quiet work. It became one of her most shared posts ever, but she didn't check the numbers. She just poured herself a glass of wine and watched the sky turn pink through her kitchen window. Far from the city, Jasmine lived near the water, in a small cottage surrounded by sea oats and salt air. She'd grown into her peace. Not perfectly, but with intention. Mornings were her sanctuary, the ocean glowing silver, the tide whispering against the shore. Her dog curled at her feet as she typed her scripts. The unedited truth had transformed into more than a podcast. It had become a platform, a movement. She used it to help others tell their own stories, women from reality shows, whistleblowers, survivors, dreamers. She no longer spoke about the past directly, but pieces of it lived inside her words, like echoes beneath a calm surface. In one special episode, she said, "People ask me if I ever regret exposing everything. Sometimes, yes. But regret fades when you realize that truth isn't a weapon, it's a compass. It doesn't destroy, it directs." The line spread far beyond her followers. Professors quoted it, journalists analyzed it, but to Jasmine, it was just something she'd learned by surviving herself. She still visited Atlanta sometimes, quietly, never announced. She and Rashida met twice a year, always in small places where no one bothered them. Their friendship was unspoken, built on mutual respect. They didn't talk about Kirk anymore. They talked about work, about family, about how it felt to be seen as human again. Sometimes they'd laugh until the waitress smiled, recognizing the sound but not the story behind it. During one visit, Jasmine brought a gift, a framed photo of the villa, taken from a distance, the sun melting behind it. "I had it developed from an old roll of film," she said. "Thought you might want to see it one last time." Rashida studied the photo quietly, the ghost of old pain flickering behind her eyes. "You know what's funny?" she said finally. "For years, that place felt like a wound. Now it just looks like scenery." Jasmine smiled. "Because it's part of your past, not your present." "Exactly," Rashida said. They clinked their glasses together, a quiet toast to closure. Kirk's world had shifted, too. He no longer lived for applause. He'd sold the old studio and opened a small community center downtown, music programs for kids, mentorship spaces, therapy workshops. He named it the Sound House, saying, "Sometimes the best way to heal is to teach someone else how not to break." The walls were covered in murals painted by local artists, scenes of resilience and rebirth. Every Friday, he hosted open mic nights where anyone could perform, no cameras, no contracts, just art. Jasmine showed up once, unannounced, and sat in the back. Kirk noticed but didn't call her out. When she left, she slipped a note under the donation box. "This is what truth should look like: loud, honest, and free." Years passed. The scandals that once ruled social media became trivia, buried under newer chaos. The villa itself was bought by a preservation group. They restored it, not as a tourist spot, but as a retreat for artists and storytellers. The caretaker stayed on, older now, saying, "This place finally got quiet enough for peace to live here." Every spring, Jasmine visited to teach a workshop about authenticity in storytelling. She'd stand on the same balcony where her pain began and teach people how to turn vulnerability into strength. One afternoon, while she spoke to a small group, a breeze swept through the villa, lifting the curtains gently. She paused, looked out at the water, and smiled. "The universe loves full circles," she said. "Sometimes it brings you right back where you fell, but this time, you know how to stand." By then, Rashida had turned her boutique brand into a foundation for women entrepreneurs. Kirk's center had expanded into neighboring cities, each one carrying his new motto, "Make something real." Jasmine's podcast had inspired a book, her words, printed on pages that smelled faintly of ink and salt. They didn't plan it, but somehow, their stories intertwined again, not through scandal, but through growth. On the 10th anniversary of the Villa leaks, Atlanta hosted a charity gala called Voices Uncut. Jasmine, Rashida, and Kirk were all invited. They hadn't been seen together in nearly a decade. When they arrived, cameras clicked, softly, not invasive, just curious. The crowd parted as the three met near the center of the room. Rashida wore a pale gold gown, Jasmine in simple white, Kirk in a charcoal suit that fit his humility. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jasmine said, "We made it." Rashida smiled. "We did more than that, we outlived it." Kirk chuckled softly. "What happened years ago wasn't just a scandal," Jasmine said. Her voice moved through the hall like a soft tide, steady and calm, but strong enough to reach everyone in the room. "It was a lesson in how truth finds its way through noise." We thought we were breaking apart, but we were breaking open. The crowd responded not with loud applause but with something gentler, quiet, hands lifted, hearts. Rashida joined her on stage, the shimmer of her dress catching the low light. Sometimes strength doesn't look like fighting, she said. It looks like letting go. The audience watched as years of tension dissolved between them in that single moment. Kirk stood at the back, eyes full of quiet pride. His expression softened by understanding. After the gala, when the lights dimmed and guests began to leave, Jasmine, Rashida, and Kirk stepped outside together. The air smelled of jasmine flowers, warm and heavy with spring. The street lamps painted gold halos on the pavement. Jasmine turned to Rashida. You ever think about what would have happened if that footage never leaked? Rashida smiled faintly. We'd still be pretending everything was perfect. Kirk nodded. And maybe we never would have grown. Their silence afterward wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, full of everything that didn't need to be said. The kind of quiet that only comes after surviving yourself. Years passed. People began to speak of them not as gossip but as legacy. Their story made its way into classrooms, where professors used it to discuss media ethics and the thin line between exposure and truth. Artists quoted them, calling them symbols of reclamation. Jasmine wrote a second book called After the Cameras. It wasn't about fame, it was about becoming real again. In the final chapter, she wrote, "We were never meant to be perfect, only real." Rashida wrote the foreword. She told our story with grace, she said, and in doing so, she gave us back our names. Kirk created a scholarship in Jasmine's honor at the Sound House, helping young artists build without being broken. The villa by the sea still stood, its walls no longer echoing with chaos. Each summer, new artists arrived to write, sing, and heal. Laughter replaced the arguments that once filled those halls. If you listened closely at dusk, you could almost hear Jasmine's laughter in the wind, soft, unbroken, timeless. Atlanta changed, rising higher with new towers and new voices, but the story of Jasmine, Rashida, and Kirk became a quiet pulse within it, an invisible thread of truth running through its rhythm. Rashida grew older with grace. Her foundation, Resilience by Rashida, expanded into a mentorship program for young women. Every summer, she gathered them in the hills of Georgia, where they sat around bonfires talking about ambition, mistakes, and forgiveness. When they asked about her past, she'd smile and say, "Every empire has a storm story. Mine just happened to be televised." At home, her sons had become men. One opened a label built on honesty and fair pay. The other became a designer, sketching ideas for his mother's boutique. Kirk still visited often, though their relationship had changed. It wasn't marriage anymore, just a quiet companionship and understanding born from years of surviving the same story. They'd sit on the porch at sunset, not to fix the past, but to share the peace they'd earned. But one evening, Rashida watched an old podcast clip of Jasmine speaking. Healing isn't the absence of pain, it's the decision to stop rehearsing it. Rashida whispered, "You always knew how to say it." Jasmine had passed away the year before, peacefully, near the ocean she loved. Her funeral was simple, no speeches, just her own voice playing through the speakers. "If I leave anything behind, let it be honesty." Rashida stood there, wind in her hair, saying goodbye to the woman who had once been her rival, her reflection, her sister in truth. After Jasmine's passing, her book became required reading in universities. A streaming platform released the Truth Edit, a quiet documentary about her life. There were no dramatics, just ocean light, her laughter, and words that felt like waves. In one scene, she said, "If people remember me at all, I hope it's not for what I exposed, but for what I rebuilt." Rashida watched the film one night alone, feeling peace settle in her chest. Afterward, she opened a box of old keepsakes and found the bracelet Kirk had given her decades earlier. She slipped it on again, not as a symbol of love, but of endurance. Kirk's single quotes as Soundhouse grew into a national movement. Branches opened across cities, teaching young artists how to protect their voices and their worth. When reporters asked about redemption, he said, "I'm not chasing redemption, I'm chasing better." He'd visit the beach sometimes, the same one Jasmine once recorded on, sitting quietly with the sound of waves. No cameras, no posts, just reflection. Years later, at a youth showcase, a young woman sang a song called "Cameras Off." Her voice trembled as she sang, "They filmed my pain and sold it back to me, but I found my melody." When the crowd erupted in applause, Kirk and Rashida exchanged a look across the room. This was the legacy Jasmine had dreamed of, art, rising from truth, not chaos. Time continued its steady march. Atlanta's skyline glittered brighter than ever. And then came a mural downtown, 3 figures by the sea, Jasmine facing the waves, Rashida holding a light behind her, and Kirk setting down a mask. Underneath it read, "Out of chaos came clarity." During the unveiling, Kirk spoke softly. "We didn't ask to be symbols. We just tried to tell the truth." Later that night, Rashida returned alone. She traced Jasmine's painted face and whispered, "Look what we built." Somewhere in the city she swore she heard waves. The years rolled on gently. The villa became a sanctuary for storytellers. Every summer, new voices arrive: writers, filmmakers, dreamers. A plaque near the balcony read, "Dedicated to Jasmine Washington, whose courage turned chaos into art." Rashida visited once a year, sitting on the same balcony where Jasmine once stood with a camera. She'd watch the sunset, her heart steady. Kirk joined her one year. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. "She'd like this," Rashida said. Kirk smiled. "She'd say we finally turned the script around." When they left that night, the ocean murmured behind them, carrying the story forward. Atlanta's new creators, those who'd never even seen the villa, still felt its influence. They learned how to film ethically, to tell truth without cruelty. Professors called it the blueprint for authenticity. Journalists described it as a cultural rebirth. Rasheeda, single quotes as granddaughters grew up seeing old clips of her interviews and Jasmine's podcasts. One asked, "Grandma, were you famous?" Rashida smiled. "For a while, but fame fades. Truth doesn't." That line went viral again, years after she said it. Winter came softly. The city slowed under pale sunlight. Rashida's mornings were quiet now: coffee, paper, a window view of Atlanta's changing skyline. Her boutique ran fine without her. She spent her days writing small essays on womanhood and reinvention. Her words appeared in magazines, often uncredited, but always recognized. Sometimes she'd step onto her balcony at dusk and listen to distant music drifting up from the streets. Knowing Jasmine's spirit lived on in every young creator brave enough to be honest. Kirk, older but at peace, had handed the sound house to his protégés. He spent his afternoons in a small garden filled with mint and jasmine. When Rashida visited, they'd sit together with lemonade, laughing quietly about the past. "We were lucky," Kirk said once. "Most stories like ours don't end this way." Rashida smiled. "Luck and a lot of forgiveness." Before leaving, she hugged him. It was an embrace of recognition, not romance, the comfort of two people who had outlived their mistakes. Months later, Rashida finished her memoir. She titled it Unfinished Peace. Kirk read the first copy with trembling hands. The cover showed an image of the ocean at dusk. "You finally wrote it," he said. "For her," Rashida replied, "for us." The book spread fast, not for scandal but for its honesty. One chapter quoted Jasmine's words, "Sometimes exposure isn't punishment, it's grace in disguise." That line appeared on murals and posters across the city. At her book launch, Kirk introduced her on stage. "Years ago," he said, "we thought we were the story. Turns out, we were just the beginning." Rashida spoke next, her voice calm. "This isn't a story about survival. It's about what comes after the piece that finally fits." The audience rose to their feet, their applause soft and reverent. And somewhere in that moment, it felt like Jasmine was there, smiling. The villa was eventually declared a heritage site, renamed the Jasmine Washington Retreat for Truth in Media. Each year, creators gathered to honor her legacy. Rashida attended the first ceremony, standing at the balcony as waves glimmered below. "You changed everything," she whispered. A young journalist approached her and said, "Your story helped me tell mine." Rashida smiled. "Then keep telling it. That's how peace stays alive." That evening, before leaving, she placed a single white rose on the balcony table. The wind brushed her face gently, as if Jasmine herself had answered. Back in Atlanta, Kirk sat in his garden, radio humming an old soul track. His phone buzzed a message from Rashida. It was a photo of the balcony with the rose. No caption. He smiled, turned up the music, and leaned back as the scent of jasmine drifted around him. Their names eventually faded from headlines, but never from the city's heart. Atlanta built archives, scholarships, and murals in their honor. Young artists mentioned their story as proof that truth could survive fame. Every so often, someone would quote Jasmine, or Rashida, or Kirk, without realizing how those words had once been born in fire. In time, peace became their inheritance. The story that began in betrayal ended in belonging, not to television or tabloids, but to time itself. The villa stood eternal, the sea whispering against its walls. Each wave carried the faint sound of Jasmine's laughter, folded into the rhythm of forever, and somewhere far away, a young writer in that villa typed the last line of her own story. "Peace is the most beautiful sequel." The sea answered her with a hush, soft and endless, carrying the echoes of all that came before the chaos, the courage, the love that refused to fade. And for the first time in a long time, everything was still. What's left isn't the chaos, it's the lesson. Truth will always make people uncomfortable before it makes them free. It cost her everything, but it gave her peace. She didn't just expose lies. She exposed how hungry the world can be for someone else's pain. And yet, somehow, she turned that hunger into healing. Rashida showed us something different: what it means to rebuild with grace. She taught the world that dignity doesn't mean silence, and strength doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. She forgave not because she had to, but because she refused to let resentment be her legacy. Every woman who's ever stayed, or left, or started over can see a part of themselves in her. She's proof that the loudest revenge is peace. And Kirk, flawed human, searching, proved that accountability isn't weakness, that a man can fall apart, own it, and still choose to become better than his worst moment. It takes courage to look in the mirror and not turn away. It takes growth to stop performing and start listening. He did both. Together, their story became a mirror for all of us. It reminded the world that the headlines fade, but humanity doesn't. That the truth, no matter how buried, has a pulse that keeps beating until someone's brave enough to let it speak. So, if you're watching this, ask yourself, what story are you living right now? Are you chasing peace? Or are you waiting for someone else to hand it to you? Are you performing for an audience that won't remember your name tomorrow? Or are you building something real that'll still matter when the lights go off? Because peace isn't luck, it's work. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. And healing isn't quiet, it's just private. Jasmine, Rashida, and Kirk didn't find peace because the world gave it to them. They found it because they finally stopped asking the world to understand and started understanding themselves. And maybe that's what you need too. Maybe this story wasn't meant to entertain you, it was meant to remind you that truth doesn't destroy you. It refines you. Maybe you've been carrying your own villa inside a place full of old wounds, old footage, things you never wanted exposed. Maybe it's time to open those doors, not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. Look at Jasmine, once ridiculed, now remembered for her honesty. Look at Rashida, once broken, now building legacies. Look at Kirk, once lost, now guiding others. Pain turned them into teachers. And that's what truth does when you stop running from it. Teaches. So, if this story reached you, if it made you feel something, don't let it end here. Carry it. Live it. Let it be your reminder that you can start again at any moment. That you can outgrow the version of yourself the world once judged. And before you leave, do what Jasmine always said at the end of her podcasts. Take a deep breath, unclench your jaw, release the day, because peace is closer than you think. It's waiting at the edge of your honesty. And for everyone who's been part of this journey, whether you followed every leak, every twist, or you just stumbled upon this story today, thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. Because stories like this don't live unless someone's there to hear them. Now it's your turn. What do you believe truth means? What part of this story spoke to you? Do you think forgiveness is strength, or is it surrender? Do you think peace is something you earn, or something you choose? Tell us in the comments below. I want to hear from you, because that's how these stories keep breathing through you. Through conversation, through reflection, through every person who decides to look at someone else's mistakes and see not gossip, but growth. So go ahead, drop your thoughts, your reflections, your lessons. Hit like if you believe that peace is worth more than pride. Hit subscribe if you believe in the kind of stories that dig deeper than the surface. That remind you, we're all still learning, still breaking, still rebuilding. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs it, someone standing at the edge of their own chaos, thinking it's too late to start over. Show them that it isn't. That no matter how loud the world gets, truth has a way of finding you, and peace has a way of forgiving you. This isn't just the end of a story, it's the beginning of a reminder. Because Jasmine's courage, Rashida's grace, and Kirk's redemption didn't just change Atlanta, they changed what it means to heal in public. Remember, the cameras don't define you, the edits don't own you, and the world's version of you isn't the only one that matters. You do, your truth does, your peace does. So as this story fades to black, take a breath and promise yourself this: no matter what happens, you'll choose peace, you'll honor your truth, and you'll never stop growing. Because in the end, that's what Jasmine wanted. That's what Rashida fought for. That's what Kirk finally understood. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's learning to dance through it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. Thank you for remembering that behind every headline, every scandal, every name, you'll always find a human heart still learning how to heal. Now go write your next chapter. Make it honest. Make it yours. Make it free.